Ladies and gentlemen, it's Hot Legs, straight from the Wine Exchange, with wine expert Kyle Meyer.
Welcome back to Hot Legs. Today we're going to take a look at one of the most topical wine points of the year that we've seen so far in 2007, and that's the releases of the great 2005 Burgundy wines from France. This is a vintage that Burgundy Files and Pinot Noir fans have been waiting several years for, ever since they first heard about the vintage reports coming in. The fact that the harvest was done under perfect conditions, and it was sunny, and vintners were dancing in the streets, and so now the wines have finally started to arrive, and we can start taking a look at just what makes 2005 so special. It was a picture-perfect harvest in this area of France. Like I said before, there was beautiful weather. The grapes were in perfect health, no disease, no rot, and the vigneron could essentially just walk out in the vineyard and pick the grapes whenever the heck they wanted. It was a real treat, and it's something that folks in this area only see maybe once a decade. Frankly, for us, we haven't seen a vintage like this since 1990, so we're talking 15 years since we've seen Burgundy wines from at this level of quality. Now, when the vintage is great, what happens is you don't have to worry so much about the super duper, what they call the Grand Cru wines, the top wines of the vintage. Those are going to take care of themselves. A few lucky collectors that are super duper multimillionaires will pony up the $800, $900, $1,000 a bottle, what have you, to get Roumier Bon Mar or Romanée Conti and such. For us, for me personally, this is why I'm looking. Because what happens is all the little wines, all the wines that everyone tends to forget about, go up another level of quality because of this perfect harvest. So the grapes that are usually grown under a little tougher conditions based on their location, etc., when they ripen perfectly, you get wines that are comparable to wines that usually in a normal Burgundy vintage costs 2 to 3 times as much. So today we're going to look at 3 what we call value plays from maybe what we call the big 3 in Burgundy. These are larger domain/negociant operations, but when it's a great vintage, these guys have access to fantastic grapes, and they can make wine just as great as those small little micro boutique guys, where there's 3 casks sitting here and 2 barrels sitting here. So we're gonna have a look at the big 3 today. We're gonna start with Faiveley, and we're gonna start with Faiveley's Bourgogne. Usually, even most vintages, one of the finest deals in Burgundy, because this wine retails on the shelf for much lower than $20. We sell for like $16, and the Faiveley family started the winery in the 1800s. They're one of the largest, no, I take that back, they are the largest landowner in Burgundy with well over 250 acres of land, which when you're dealing with small little domains that own maybe 3-4 acres and their life depends on it, the Faiveleys are really smart how they ran their business the last 200 years, so they have an incredible amount of grapes to work with. Their Bourgogne comes from I believe several different sources, and they do buy in a little bit of fruit to help make this wine. So, without further ado, it's the 05 Bourgogne from Faiveley. A Bourgogne is basically just kind of like the catch-all appellation name for 100% Pinot Noir wine from Burgundy. It doesn't have to come from a specific area, a specific vineyard, other than the region of Burgundy itself, and it has to be 100% Pinot Noir. Technically, all the wines on the table today could be labeled Bourgogne if the producers chose to do, but why leave money on the table? Here's 2005. Ripe cherry fruit. Now with Faiveley's Bourgogne, I think a lot of this comes from the southern part of Burgundy. You get a little more of a strawberry character coming into the wine, and a touch of minerality. They're big landowners in an area called Mercouet, which is in the farthest south point of Burgundy in the Côte Chalonnaise. So you get a little bit of that minerally character. But just the fact that we're talking about complexity in a $15 bottle of Pinot Noir, it jazzes me out. The 1990 of this, well, I could tell you a story, but I drank way too much of it, and this brings back some fond memories of shooting pool and getting stupid. Fabulous wine. Great length, wonderful acidity. The tannins are soft, melty, velvety. It's maybe a touch lean for someone that's drinking, like a $70 mailing list only Pinot from the Santa Rita Hills, what have you. But for most of us that enjoy Pinot for what it is, for its delicacy, finesse, elegance, this is a great bottle of wine for less than $20. Yum. It'll age too. 2, 3 years, 4 years, no problem. Forget about in the cellar and see what happens. The great years come back and surprise you. Louis Jadot. Louis Jadot, a lot of you have heard about. You see his Puy Fuissé and Macon Village and the stuff, you know, that the Jadot concern makes millions of cases of. You see it everywhere. But a lot of people don't know that Louis Jadot is a very serious Burgundy winery. They're actually one of the top producers of high-end Burgundy wines. And much like Faiveley and Louis Latour, they own a large amount of land, including, I believe it's almost well over 40 acres in the village of Marcenay. Marcenay is in the most northernmost part of Burgundy, just north of Gevrey-Chambertin. And Marcenay for years was just considered like the previous wine, just Bourgogne. But in 1986, I believe it was, this appellation was the only one since the whole appellation Contrôlier thing started back in the 30s to actually gain its own appellation. They fought and fought and fought, and Marcenay became its own gig back in the 80s. So, seeing as it is quite close to Gevrey, within a mile or two, you get the Gevrey characters, which is what we call true Côte de Nuit character. More black cherry here, more minerals. Man, these guys were smart. The Jadots were really smart. They bought this. They bought all this property from the Claire Dow estate back in the mid '80s, right around the time that coincidence that Marcenay was becoming an appellation. So this is domain owned. This isn't like purchased fruit. You know, bought off a truck. You know, some guy didn't walk in with a bunch of grapes and say, "Monsieur Jadot." No, it didn't happen that way. Bars raised. You see why Marcenay is its own gig. Here you have, what do you have? You have black cherry, more of a black cherry character as opposed to the strawberry thing we did in the previous one. The tannins are finer, they're silkier, it's longer. Very explosive mid-palate for a wine that on our shelf sells for around 20 bucks. Unbelievable. More spice, a touch of mineral, but not an aggressive mineral, not like an iron or character. It's more like a whetstone character, fresh rain. I'm all over that. That's great wine. Now we're going to go to Louis Latour's Beaune Vigne Franche. Now here we're stepping it up a notch. This isn't cheap like the other two wines. I'm sorry, inexpensive. No one says cheap anymore. This is actually a little pricier. This one's going to set you back around $35, which, if I'm not mistaken, is about the same price as a middling Oregon Pinot Noir or perhaps an entry-level bottling from the Russian River Valley. Listen, for 35 bucks, you get 100% Premier Cru wine from one of the best vineyard sites in the Côte de Beaune. Vigne Franche is one of the best vineyards in Beaune. It is Premier Cru. And Louis Latour has owned it for a long time, or a part of it, I should say. Louis Latour has been around since the 1700s, and these guys are the largest owners of Grand Cru Vineyard in Burgundy, which, I don't know how that applies to the Premier Crus, but it sounds damn impressive, doesn't it? This is, once again, 100% Pinot Noir. The cool thing here, Louis Latour is one of the very few wineries that make their own barrels. They don't want anyone else. They want to take all the potential doubt out of the situation. They want to have their own barrels coopered by their own tonnellerie that they can put their wines in and feel confident they're not getting a funky barrel from another tonnellerie somewhere else. So all Louis Latour barrels, their barrels are in demand. Actually, they sell their barrels to a lot of really high-end wineries outside of the estate. They make about twice what they can use, and they sell the rest at super high prices to a few lucky folks. Now you get almost like a sweet kirshy note to the cherry. Cherry liqueur. The wine's riper, it's fresher, it's more intense. Spice. I love good bones. You can drink buckets of them, and they age 10 years, 12 years. Swallow half, spit half. That sounds like a deal, right? Funny thing with Latour is we're usually not a huge fan of Latour's red wines. For some reason, their white wines always seem more exciting. In 05, you have this perfect storm, this harmonic convergence, where Louis Latour's reds are absolutely delicious. All gravity fed in the winery. I think they're making some winery changes. These wines are the best we've ever seen. They're really lavish, really silky, kind of what you expect out of great older Burgundy, but it almost tastes mature now, like you could drink the heck out of it at this juncture. Killer house wine, if 35 bucks is your house wine gig. So there you have it. Short and sweet, 3 of the best values in Burgundy we've seen today from 3 of Burgundy's most reputable houses in one of the greatest vintages we've ever seen. Why wouldn't you buy it?